Ladies, welcome back to the channel. Today we are making risotto for lunch, one of the most famous rice dishes in all of Italy. Very, very simple to make. I don't understand why more people don't do this at home. Literally, if you can cut up a few vegetables, cut up a few ingredients, and stir a pan, trust me, you can make risotto at home just as good as anybody else out there in any restaurant. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be making risotto with a couple of different vegetables, literally whatever I have kicking around the house. I've got some mushrooms, some onions, some celery, some zucchini, a little garlic, and as always, my chili pepper. But ladies, you can use whatever vegetables you have kicking around, whatever you like, whatever you have kicking around, by all means feel free to throw it in. This is more about the technique and the preparation of the dish itself than it is about the ingredients. Risotto is as much about the technique as it is about what you put in it. You can put seafood, you can put different kinds of meat. We'll go through several different variations of this as time goes on, but we're going to start with a simple vegetable-based version just to get everybody comfortable with the technique. So we're going to start things off with a little bit of pancetta. This is some pork belly that has been cured, not smoked, but cured. So similar to bacon, but this is a traditional Italian product that we put in a lot of our dishes. It's not in there as a protein, it's more as a seasoning. So this is essentially unsmoked but cured bacon. Any good deli will sell pancetta. Simply get them to cut it for you at their thickest setting within the slicer and bring it home and just cut it up. Literally, we're going to be using about 100 grams in total, so not a whole lot. And this recipe will feed comfortably 6 people. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the rind off the pancetta. This we don't need, so we'll just toss that out. And then what we will do is we will basically just cut this up into slices. Just 1/4-inch slices. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this up into matchsticks. Here we are. Remember to keep those fingers out of the way. As always, ladies, please wash those hands. Juliana, Leah, Wanji, Alice, I'm watching you. Wash those hands before we start cooking, ladies. So now what we're going to do, once we have this cut up into slices, we're just going to cut this into little matchsticks. Remember, tuck those fingers out of the way. And then this is going to go right in our pan as a very base flavoring. So we'll get this sliced up. Again, this is not meant to be, a protein in the typical sense of meat in a dish. This is really more to flavor it. For those who don't eat pork, feel free to substitute it with turkey bacon, or you can leave this out altogether. For those who can't find pancetta, a little bit of sliced bacon would do as well. I'd say probably maybe between 4 to 5 slices of just your regular sliced bacon would do fine in this application. So we'll start things off. A little bit of olive oil in the pan. We're looking at maybe 4 or 5 tablespoons to get things started. And keep in mind, we need to have some oil in the pan just to make sure that we have something to toast the rice a little bit later. So we'll start things off with a little bit of pancetta. In this case, there we are. And what we want to do is just get the pancetta starting to render, which means there's a little bit of fat, as you can see, in the pancetta itself. We're going to get that to come out and season the oil. And then what we're going to do is, as this gets a little bit crispy, we're going to start to throw in our vegetables. So now that that's started, we'll get our vegetables cut up. We'll start with 1 medium-sized onion. And as usual, we'll just get a few slices in there, and then we'll give it just a quick dice. Ideally, what we want to do here with the onion is we want to get it about the size as a grain of rice, maybe a little bit bigger. But we'd like to have all of our vegetables cut up relatively uniformly so that we're not dealing with a big honking chunk of anything specific in the dish. There we go, our onions are cut up. Now, I've got 8 cups of chicken broth here on the side. This is This is warm broth. We're going to be adding this to our dish. Just turn the heat down here a little bit. You don't want to be adding cold stock to your dish as it cooks. You don't want to bring the temperature of the pan down. You want to keep that temperature high. So we're going to heat up our stock so that it's ready to go, so that when we add it in, it maintains, you know, a high temperature in the pan. Now we've got a couple of stalks of celery here as well. We'll get these cut up. Just keep an eye on that pancetta. We want to make sure that it doesn't burn along the way. We just want it to get crispy, similar as you would when you're frying bacon. There we are. We'll give this a little stir as well. You can see we're starting to get a little bit of color on that pancetta. That's exactly what we want. And when we're cooking risotto, certainly this type of risotto, we're talking 20-25 minutes and we've got lunch or dinner on the table. So we'll get our clove of garlic. Whoa, hey-oh. Our chili pepper. And for a little spill, we'll give him a little wash. This is live cooking, ladies. Things are happening all around us. So we'll get our garlic out of its wrapper here. There we are. And we'll just discard that. This is coming along nicely. Almost time to put our vegetables in. We'll just crush our garlic with the heel of our hand and the side of our knife, and we'll give this a fine dice as well. This was one large clove of garlic. If you have a couple of smaller ones, I throw those in as well. We'll get our chili cut up here as well. Just take the end off of that and we'll slice it up fine. Again, chili fully optional. If you like a little bit of heat, feel free to put that in. If you don't, you can always leave that out. There we are. So now our pancetta's taken on a little bit of color. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our first wave of vegetables in the pan just to start to cook these guys down. There we are. And now we'll continue on. The shape of the pan here is important as well. What we want is a pan that's wider than it is tall. So this pan is only about 2.5–3 inches tall. And it's certainly more than that in terms of width, but we want to have the broth, as it soaks into the rice, we also want to have the broth evaporate off so it concentrates the flavor in the pan, and that way what cooks into the rice is a more intense flavor from your stock and from all the vegetables and seasonings and ingredients that you put into your risotto. So now we'll start things off, a little bit of salt and pepper. Not too much salt because the pancetta is a little bit salty. So we want to take that into consideration as we're seasoning. So just give that a quick stir, raise the heat a little bit, and we'll get these guys sweating off. We don't want to get a ton of color on the vegetables. We just want the vegetables to start to release some of their juice into the pan so that we can get that flavoring into the dish as well. We've got 3 little zucchini here. We're just going to take the ends off, and then we're going to slice these up and get them right into the pan. So with these guys, I'm just going to cut them right along the middle, and we'll leave them in half. If they were any bigger, I'd cut these in 4. So what we'll do is we'll just get these sliced up. it away. Next one. We'll give this a little stir just to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom of the pan. There we are. Get our zucchini cut up. There we are. And we'll get our last one cut up in here as well. All right. Now let's get all of these guys into the pan as well. And we'll move on to our mushrooms. Now what I had in the fridge was just a couple of cremini mushrooms. You can use anything at all. Oyster mushrooms, button mushrooms, gnocchis, anything that you have kicking around the fridge can easily go into a risotto and it'll work out just as well. So let's stir this around. Now time for our mushrooms. I've washed these off as well. I've washed all of our vegetables that we've put in here so that they're clean and they're ready to go. Now, the cutting looks fancy. All I'm doing is I'm using my finger as a guide so that when I go up and down, the tip of my finger is curved out of the way. I'm pinching my knife so I have full control, but I'm just using that flat side of my finger as a guide so that each of these slices comes out completely uniform. And there we are. So the last of our vegetables go in. And now because we've added a little bit more of our vegetables to the pan, we're going to reseason. We're going to reseason as we go. A little bit more salt. And a little bit more pepper. There we are. Raise the heat. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook these vegetables down. So it looks like a lot of volume now, but we're going to give this about 5 minutes or so in the pan, and we're going to let this cook down. We will be right back in 5 minutes. And we're back. So it's been about 5 minutes. As you can see, these vegetables have sweated down. They're kind of getting much softer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add our rice. Now, I'm going to put in the comment below just what kind of rice I use for this. First, my personal preference is a rice called carnaroli. Italian rice grown in the north of Italy in the Po Valley. I find you get the best results with this rice, but you can use arborio, you can use vialone nano. There's several types of rice that you can use for this application. My personal favorite, carnaroli. I find the results most consistent every time. So I've got 500 grams of rice here. I'm just going to put that right into the pan. Now the important thing is to stir it in. You want all that olive oil, all the juice from all the vegetables to get right into the rice, and you want to coat the rice with all of the liquid and all of the olive oil that's in the pan. And the reason why is we want to toast this rice before we add our wine and before we add our chicken stock. And toasting makes all the difference. The flavor that you get is absolutely unique, and you want all of that flavoring to start to cook into the rice so that the product that you get at the end is the best that it can be. There we are. We're just going to let that toast for a couple of seconds. Get our wine out of the fridge. So So we're going to use about a glass of wine to start things off. This is the traditional risotto method, dry white wine. In our case, we've got a Pinot Grigio here, very food-friendly wine, great in this application. So I can now smell that the rice is toasting. I can smell that. It's got a very, very unique nutty aroma. So now that we've got that going, we're going to start things off with a little bit of wine. And don't worry about the alcohol in the wine. So, about a glass of wine or so. Don't worry about the alcohol. The alcohol will cook away, and what we'll be left with is just the flavor of the wine, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to give this a quick stir. If there's anything that's starting to get stuck at the bottom of the pan, we want to make sure we dislodge that. So I like using a silicone spatula for this. This is a heat-resistant spatula. It's not a plastic one. It's not going to melt over high heat. But this is something that I find is great for scraping the bottom of the pan. It's also great for moving some things around as we stir. There we are. So as the wine gets absorbed into the rice, now we're going to start adding our broth. Now our chicken broth here, again, this is a chicken broth that I bought. Nothing wrong with buying your chicken broth. This is one that it's a good quality stock. What I've done here is this is no salt added. So I want to control the amount of salt that I put in my cooking. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt now, a couple of pinches of salt. This is 8 cups of chicken stock. This will be more than enough for 6 hungry people. So we'll give this a quick stir. And as you see, this is already hot. So I want to maintain now the temperature in my pan. So we're just going to give this one final stir. There we are. I'm seeing that the wine is now getting absorbed into the rice. The bottom of the pan is starting to dry up. So I don't want any of that to stick. And we're going to start adding our stock a couple of ladles at a time. So we don't add the whole thing all at once. A couple of ladles at a time is all we need. And we're going to give this a stir. And literally, we're almost there. So this will take us a good probably 15 minutes or so. Adding the stock in increments, 1 or 2 ladles at a time, and just continuing to give it a stir. Anytime you find something that's sticking to the bottom of the pan, we want to loosen that up. And I will see you ladies in about 10 minutes time. So ladies, it has been about 10 minutes. As you can see, I've added most of my stock, not quite all of it, in 1 to 2 ladle increments. And what I'm doing is I'm continually stirring my pot, and this has been over medium heat the entire time. So as we stir, it's that friction between the grains of rice. As we stir the pan, those grains of rice are rubbing together, and that starch is leaching out. Look how thick the liquid has become. This is all from the rice. No cream, no butter, none of that. And if you have to do that, that's a cheat. And no self-respecting Italian would ever do that. So this is all just from the rice itself. As you can see, this is continuing to simmer away over medium heat. We do want some bubbles breaking the surface. We don't want this at a rapid boil, none of that. We just want this, at a fairly consistent medium heat, just to make sure that we're cooking consistently, that the liquid is soaking into the rice consistently, and that we're giving it a good stir along the way. As the pan dries up, we'll just add a little bit more stock. And this should be just enough stock to get us right over the finish line. Now what I've done in the meantime is I've grated a little Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. This looks like a lot of cheese, but really when you grate with one of these microplane graters, this has very, 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 very fine holes in it. And what you see when you flip it over, you get these very, very thin shavings of cheese. So it looks like a lot by volume, but I'd say this is probably 80 or 90 grams of cheese. So what I've done is I grated off a big wedge. Please don't buy that stuff that's pre-grated, or even worse, that stuff that comes in the green and red container. We can do better than that. Real cheese, grated right when it's needed, gives you absolutely the best flavor in the dish. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this go for another 5 minutes or so. I'm going to add the last of my stock, and then I will see you at the finish. Right, we are back, and our risotto is just about there. Just about there. So all of our stock has been fully absorbed. You can see it's still nice and oozy and runny, and this is the way it was meant to be. I've been in restaurants before where I've seen chefs pile it up in some kind of mold and put stuff on top of it. If it's got the integrity to stand up by itself without toppling over, to me that's not risotto. So I think we are just about there. We're going to give this a quick taste. Seasoning's perfect. And the rice still has that little bit of bite right in the middle. Perfect. Each grain is separate. We're going to shut the heat off. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put in our cheese. We're going to give it a quick stir. Let's get all of our cheese in there. Can never have enough cheese. There we are. We're going to take our spatula and we're just going to give it a quick stir in the middle. We call this mantecare. We're going to get the cheese melted and all the way in there. And as we give this one final stir, you see the starch of the rice is combining with the cheese, and you're getting this beautiful, oozy, gooey risotto. So we're going to give this a good stir, good vigorous stir, and then we are ready to plate up. All right. And one final stir, and we are there. All right. So what we're going to do, look at our bowl, look at our ladle. Oh, there we are. And one more. There we are. Now, ladies, the way we know this is done, have a look at that. As we shake the bowl, you see how it jiggles like that? We call that alonda, on the wave. So we want it to be loose, we want it to be oozy, and what we're going to do is, if we have a little bit of unfiltered olive oil, we're going to give that just a little shot on top. There we are, just for flavor. And that, ladies, is our risotto with zucchini and mushrooms. We'll give this a quick stir. This is the kind of dish that will warm you from the inside out. Now, the trick to eating this is we want to grab this from the outside of the bowl because that's what cools first. We'll give this a quick taste. Fantastic. Ladies, you've got to try this at home. Literally 25-30 minutes, you've got dinner on the table. This will easily feed 6. One of the best things you'll ever put in your mouth. We'll see you on the next one.